Mr. Fedoruk, you have how many witnesses available?
So just kind of judging as far as the time, probably just 2 more officers testify. I think that'll take, it might be short of 40 minutes unless the court wants to go over.
I know we're gonna break at noon. I'm just trying to figure out how many witnesses you think you'd have before then.
I think it's just the 2 officers.
But assuming they go quicker than that, do you have someone else available?
Possibly. Sergeant Drow is on his way.
Okay.
May have him.
Please be seated. Somebody has phone issues? Yes, you should turn it off. We all set? Mr. Fedoruk, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call Officer Glenn Hill.
Morning, Officer Hill.
Morning.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer.
Good morning.
Could you please spell your full name, state your full name, spelling first and last?
Glenn Hill, Glenhill,
And how are you employed?
with the Saginaw Township Police Department.
And you're an officer with the township?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall January 27th of 2018?
I do.
And you recall being on duty on that day?
Yes.
And do you recall responding to a dispatch report that's related to this particular case?
Yes.
And do you recall just generally what the report indicated?
Dispatch advised that there had been a shooting in the city of Saginaw and provided a suspect vehicle description, a black Dodge Charger with chrome trim. And so being that our township borders the city, I proceeded to be on the lookout and check an area for it.
And do you recall the approximate time when you would have received that report?
I don't recall the exact time. I know it was before 1:18 p.m.
Okay. So getting that report, what did you do?
So, like I said, I was just generally on the lookout, and I went to Camelot Place Apartments and just checked the parking lots in the complex there.
Okay. And was there anything you found of interest?
At approximately 1:18 p.m. that's when I located a vehicle that matched the suspect vehicle description.
Okay. And let me go back a little bit. So the time of the dispatch report, do you think it was after 12:30? Does that sound right?
I couldn't be accurate. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. And so the charger you located, anything as far as the description that you can tell the jury?
So the vehicle was parked in the lot adjacent to 150 Camelot Drive, which is an apartment building within the complex. It was backed into a parking space underneath the carport. It was sitting parallel to me, so immediately what stood out to me was the chrome door handles as well as the chrome trim on the door pillars. And when I approached the vehicle, it was locked, backed in, windows were rolled up, it was unoccupied. I smelled the strong odor of marijuana emanating from the vehicle. And then a couple things stood out to me that indicated the vehicle had been driven recently. And those two things were the engine block felt warm and the tires had kind of a layer of dirt and debris on them that was wet, which was consistent with road and weather conditions that day. Okay.
And as far as the color of the car, sorry, you might have said that, but what was the color again?
It was a black Dodge Charger.
Okay. Anything as far as roughly the year that you knew of?
Afterwards, I learned it was approximately 2007, I believe.
All right.
Telling you what. Yes. That's the vehicle I located. Mhm.
Now, just some other things about the vehicle. Did you notice whether there was a license plate on it?
There was not a registration plate attached to it, and the VIN plate that would normally be on the dashboard of the vehicle was obstructed.
Now, as far as the odor of marijuana, so just to be specific, was it something that was a scent you could determine where it was coming from?
Yes,
Okay, where did you determine it was coming from?
just from the vehicle.
Okay, like as in the inside or the outside of the vehicle, could you tell?
My assumption was that it was coming from the compartment within the vehicle, but I was standing outside of it smelling it.
Okay. But it was coming from the vehicle itself, not a vehicle that was beside it or something else that was beside it.
No,
And sorry, I asked kind of a confusing question there. So just to clarify though, that you determined the smell was coming from the Dodge Charger, correct?
yes.
Now, you said you noticed some, I guess, wet debris on the tires. Can you say anything about the weather at the time to go along with that?
I don't recall it raining at that moment. I just remember there was some precipitation earlier that day that made the roads wet.
And then was there anything you did with the car?
So I let dispatch know that I was with a vehicle that matched the suspect description. And I thought it best to have a Saginaw city officer come further assess it. So in the meantime of waiting for him, I used my car to block it in and then kind of kept eye on it and walked over to the property manager's office and learned a little bit more about the car.
Were you able to learn the owner of the car?
Yes,
And who is that?
Miss Lisa Curtis.
And Was there another officer then, a city officer who responded?
Yes,
And who is that?
that was Officer Ward, W-A-R-D.
And did you observe, were you able to observe Officer Ward do anything with the car?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you know if it was impounded?
I don't know.
Okay. You left before it was, anything was done with it to impound it?
Just after he arrived, he took control of the vehicle, and my role shifted from controlling the vehicle to helping out the city with, we kept a perimeter around that building, just to monitor who came in and out, particularly of the apartment Miss Curtis lived in, and then help them out with the same at another apartment building.
Okay. As far as what was done with it, whether it be towed away or not, did you know what they were going to do with it?
That.
No. Okay. And then also you said that you were participating, I guess, in some investigation of Miss Curtis's apartment. What did you do specifically as far as that?
We just watched the apartment that was registered to her, watched to see if anybody came or went from it, and did the same for another nearby apartment building.
All right. So you weren't involved in the actual search of Miss Curtis's residence or anything like that?
I believe we helped do a walkthrough just to make sure nobody was inside, but didn't have much involvement besides that.
Okay. There was nothing you found of evidentiary value inside the residence?
No, sir.
And then as far as searching the vehicle, that wasn't something that you participated in?
No, sir.
And then just to clarify, the specific address of the Camelot Apartments, what was that, if you know?
The building that the parking lot was adjacent to and that the vehicle returned to was 150 Camelot Drive, Apartment 1.
All right. And that's in Saginaw, Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Questions, Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Hill, it's common practice for Saginaw Township and Saginaw City to interact with each other when there's a situation arising where either jurisdiction could be involved. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you were following the standard practice when you heard this dispatch basically involving the city of Saginaw, but it could have something to do with something happening in the township.
Yes.
So with a description of that vehicle, were you just going to Camelot Apartments then in the course of your regular patrol, or did you go there for some specific reason related to the dispatch?
Related to the dispatch, just to check that apartment complex for that vehicle.
Was there something about that particular complex, or just the fact that there would be a number of vehicles with any apartment complex?
That particular complex, but also it falls into my patrol area.
Okay. Did you routinely patrol that area then as part of your patrol duties?
Yes.
You worked an 8-hour shift, I assume?
Probably a 12 that day.
Okay. Would there be any frequency or pattern as to how many times you might go through that particular area of the Camelot Apartments?
Generally speaking, probably wouldn't be unheard of to go once a shift, I suppose.
Okay. In this particular time, it comes to your attention that there is, in fact, a vehicle parked that matches the description that you had heard over the radio.
When I drove through the apartment complex and checked, that's when I saw the vehicle.
Had you ever seen that vehicle there before, to your knowledge?
Not that stood out to me.
And the vehicle was backed into the location. correct?
Yes, sir.
Would there have been a building as part of the back of it?
No, it was underneath a carport, and the roof of that carport kind of angles down. So that's as far back as you can park in that
Okay.
particular lot.
So by backing up to the back of the carport, it would be harder to see that the vehicle didn't have a plate on it. Is that correct?
If you walk around the back of the carport, you can still see where the plate would be.
But you'd have to get out of your car and walk around.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell in any way how long the plate had been removed from that vehicle?
No.
But it appeared the vehicle had recently been driven.
Yes.
The engine compartment was still warm,
Yes.
and there was material on the tires consistent with the way the pavement was that day.
Yes.
So you don't know if the plate was removed when it was parked there or if it had been removed before.
Correct.
Now, in addition, if there is no plate on a vehicle, there's a VIN number associated with every vehicle that can be checked as to registration. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the VIN number on this particular Dodge Charger would have been on the dash?
The one that's most commonly visible is on the dashboard, a little plate.
Okay. Vehicles do have VIN numbers at other locations.
Yes.
Okay. But when you went to look for the VIN number on this, was that after you saw that it didn't have its plate?
Yes.
But the area where the dash was obstructed, is that right?
Correct. Where the VIN plate would be.
Okay. And it was covered with something so you couldn't see it.
Yes, it was obstructed.
Okay. Now, while you were waiting for the city to arrive, you went over to the manager's office, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's where you obtained the name of Lisa Curtis for that vehicle?
Yes.
You also obtained information, or at least you were asked to keep an eye on a second apartment during the course of your activities helping the city, is that right?
Yes.
Was that in the same building of 150?
No, that was a different building nearby.
Did you receive any direct information as to who to watch out for or why that particular apartment was being watched out for?
No, just other than a person of interest, quote unquote.
Quote unquote from some city officer?
Or detective, but some
Okay.
member of the Saginaw Police Department.
Okay. Now, as far as smelling marijuana, based on your experience and expertise, marijuana has a distinctive odor to it. Is that your opinion?
Yes, sir.
And is that true after it's been smoked or when it's still raw yet to be smoked?
There's two different smells.
Smells different after it's been smoked, right?
Yes, sir.
If I were to smoke a tobacco cigarette and someone else was smoking a marijuana cigarette, you could tell the difference after they were smoked?
Yes.
And then prior to being smoked, if I had a marijuana cigarette of raw marijuana, I'll call it ready to be smoked, you could also pick that out as being different from tobacco?
Yes.
In this particular instance, do you recall whether it was raw or smoked marijuana that you smelled?
I do not recall.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Fedora?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, Mr. Fedora.
People call Sergeant Nathan Volker. Morning, Sergeant. Could you please state your full name, spelling first and last?
Nathaniel Volker, Nathaniel, Nathaniel, Volker, V as in Victor, Oelker.
And how are you employed?
I'm a lieutenant with the City of Saginaw Police Department.
I apologize. I forgot you're a lieutenant
It's
now,
okay.
so my apologies. And do you recall on January 27th, 2018, you were still with the department, correct?
Yes, I was.
All right. And at that time, you were a sergeant?
Yes, I was.
And now on January 27th, 2018, do you recall that you were on duty?
Yes,
And you recall getting dispatched to the scene of a shooting?
yes, I did.
And did you then respond to that dispatch report?
I did. I believe I was second or third on scene.
Okay. And do you recall the address?
I don't recall the address offhand. I did bring a copy of my report with me. I could refer to it for the address.
If that would help refresh your recollection, go ahead.
In my report, I have the address listed as 522 South Bond.
All right. And that's in Saginaw, Michigan?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And do you recall what time you arrived?
Again, I recall it was in the afternoon. I don't remember the specific time. I could grab that from my report.
If that'll help refresh your recollection, go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, it was in the afternoon. In my report, I have it listed as 12:30.
Okay. And when you arrived, so there were other officers present when you arrived?
Yes.
Okay. And who was present at the time?
Officer Moore was on scene along with Officer Wenger.
Okay. And do you recall what Officer Wenger was doing?
Officer Wenger had just begun administering first aid to the victim.
Okay. And what was your what was your role at the time?
My immediate response when I arrived was to assist Officer Wenger with first aid. We identified the injuries the victim has sustained, and I believe we used an AED.
And what's that?
AED is for heart rhythm. If the victim's heart has stopped, it administers a shock. I believe when we put the AED on, it advised not to give a shock. So we never did administer a shock. I don't think so.
Okay. And about how long did that go on?
That went on for a couple of minutes until MMR arrived with the ambulance, and then they took over care for the victim.
Okay. And so the victim was taken into the ambulance ultimately?
Yes,
All right. And then the ambulance drove away, obviously.
correct.
Now, after that, what was your role at the scene?
I assisted for a period of time in marking some of the evidence that was clear, that was out in plain sight there. And then shortly after that, for a period of time, I also spoke with some witnesses in the immediate vicinity before returning to the scene. And I maintained scene security until I ultimately released it to the detectives.
Okay. Now, I'm going to refer you to the monitor. there's an exhibit on there that's marked as People's Exhibit 20. Are you able to see that?
I can, it's kind of cut off from the table here, but
Okay.
it might be
I
easier if
can-
I approached it.
Yeah, and I can bring it to you.
Okay,
if you-
I am having a hard time seeing it.
Actually, Your Honor, is it okay if Lieutenant Volker steps off the stand? Approach?
That's fine.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I just need you to identify it, and do you recognize it? Okay, and then this is Exhibit 21. Do you recognize that? Okay, and you can have a seat now. That's fine. Now, you indicated you're marking some items, and in the photograph, are those markings present?
Yes, the yellow cones and some of them are square in shape, but they have numbers and letters on them. We were placing those next to items that we believe were evidence.
All right. And do you recall what the actual items were that you were marking?
I recall seeing some shell casings. I recalled seeing some bullet fragments. I recalled seeing a laser sight for a handgun. I believe there was some blood evidence on the sidewalk along with some clothing.
All right. And did you ultimately seize it?
I didn't seize any of it. It was turned over to the detectives when they arrived on scene.
Okay. And was that with the Michigan State Police?
Yes, that was MSP.
All right. And as far as any of the items that you noticed there, were you able to determine whether anything moved between the time you arrived and then the time that MSP arrived?
No, nothing moved. When I arrived, and then like I said, I was there maintaining the scene until it was turned over to MSP, and no, nothing had changed.
Okay.
I do, yes. This. This is a close-up picture of the laser sight that I located on scene there. Same picture, just with an evidence marker next to it. Yes, it is.
Mr. O'Farrell,
No objection.
Exhibit 22 and 23 will be admitted. You may.
And Lieutenant, if this requires you to get stand up again, feel free. But are you able to tell? Actually, let me put up. Are you able to describe where exactly the laser sight was found on exhibit 20.
I'll approach the picture to see if I can tell for sure. I recall it being near the victim. I can't recall specific location, but I may be able to see it in the picture.
Okay, if you can approach. Now, as far as again, the location of the laser sight never changed, it never moved, correct?
It did not change. No, we marked it when we saw it and it did not move.
Okay. Did anyone touch it?
No,
Okay. You didn't touch it?
I did
correct?
not. It was not touched or moved until the detectives collected it as evidence.
Okay. And then while you were attending to Mr. Parham, the victim, did you notice anybody touch it at that time?
I didn't notice anybody touch it, no.
Okay. And Davion Thompson is the defendant in this particular case. And again, just for contamination issues, had you had any contact with Mr. Thompson on that day?
No,
Okay. Had you had any contact with Mr. Thompson prior to that?
not that I know of, no.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. O'Farrell?
Lieutenant, do you recall a blanket or sheet being in the area where Mr. Parham was laying in the driveway?
I don't recall that being there on arrival. No, I don't. I recall MMR had a blanket.
Well, they bring blankets with their.
They would have come with their equipment, yes. I
I'm
do not
talking about-
recall one when I arrived.
Okay. Did you have to direct any civilians out of the area or to stay away?
We didn't direct anybody that was there. There was a house. You can see it in the background of the picture there that we did clear of people, but there was nobody right outside in the area when I arrived, no.
And you were the second or third officer on the scene?
Yes, I was. I believe myself and the second officer arrived pretty much at the same time.
Would the second officer have been Officer Wenger, who you referred to already?
Yes,
Okay, and he testified earlier. Maybe you weren't here for that.
I was not, no.
Okay. And what was the name of the third officer that was there?
Officer Moore, Terrence Moore.
Do you know if he was actually the first on the scene?
I believe he was, yes.
So you're not aware even probably prior to your arrival of any sort of radio traffic or anything that would indicate that there had been civilians that had to be cleared from the area?
I don't remember anything like that, no.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Fedora?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch at this time. Caution you once again not to discuss the case among yourselves, nor with anyone else, nor listen to, read, or watch any news reports concerning this trial. Have a pleasant lunch. We'll see you back at 1:30. You may be seated. Records reflect the jury is not present at this time. Anything for the record, Mr. Fedoric?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. O'Farrell?
And I would inquire, if I may, Lisa Curtis is expected to testify this afternoon.
No, Your Honor. I have her scheduled for tomorrow after Dr. Brand.
Okay, how many witnesses do you anticipate calling this afternoon?
There's four witnesses. I was hoping to have Dr. Bishop Matz testify by Zoom at 1:30 if possible. And then after that, it would be 3 other officers.
And when you say by Zoom, has that already been worked out? Technologically, we know that's going to happen.
I believe we have it worked out. I'll come in early, make sure everything's a go, and
Okay, so you have 4 witnesses after the doctor?
correct. And the only other one would be Mrs. Eam. And I guess we're still kind of holding off on seeing what transpires.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. O'Farrell?
Oh, Your Honor.
I will stand in recess till 1:30, and Mr. Fedoric come in early and make sure all that's working, okay?